Jack Reeves stood motionless on the rocky ridge, Winchester 73 rifle pressed against his shoulder, right eye squinting down the brass sight. 6 riders approached the canyon below, kicking up dust in the golden afternoon sun. His trigger finger remained steady, calloused thumb resting on the hammer. Sweat trickled down his weathered face, but he didn't blink. Inside the cabin below, a young woman's pained moans cut through the silence. Sarah Miller's urgent voice followed. "They're coming. We don't have much time." Jack adjusted his grip on the rifle, the well-worn stock fitting his hands like an old friend. "That's Victor Blackwood and 6 gunmen. He's brought his best this time." His voice hardened to flint. "Doesn't matter. Today I kill him or die trying." He'd waited 5 years for this moment, 5 long years of nightmares, of carrying the ghosts of dead comrades, of plotting revenge against the man who'd ordered their slaughter. The monster who wore a Confederate captain's uniform while committing atrocities that had nothing to do with any cause worth fighting for. Today the dead would have their justice. 2 weeks earlier, the Silver Creek Saloon in Riverstone, New Mexico territory, pulsed with the chaotic energy that defined mining towns in 1885. Piano notes battled with drunken laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the constant shuffle of boots on rough wooden floors. Jack Reeves sat alone at a corner table, back to the wall, nursing a whiskey. At 45, he looked older, deep lines carved into his sun-hardened face, gray streaking his dark hair beneath a dust-covered Stetson. His eyes, though, cold blue and watchful, missed nothing. The Colt single-action Army revolver on his hip had notches worn smooth from years of use, and the knife in his boot had tasted blood in 2 wars. He rarely came to town, preferring the solitude of his small cattle ranch in the foothills. But a man needed supplies and occasionally whiskey. What he didn't need was trouble, which was why he tensed when Victor Blackwood entered the saloon. Blackwood owned the largest silver mine in the territory, along with half the town. Tall, imposing at 52, with silver hair and immaculate black clothes that contrasted with the dusty miners and cowboys. A jagged scar ran down his neck, disappearing beneath his collar, the only imperfection in his aristocratic appearance. Jack lowered his hat slightly. 5 years since Antietam, since he'd watched Blackwood, then Captain Victor, the Vulture, order the execution of Union prisoners and civilians alike. 5 years of tracking him, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment. Blackwood hadn't recognized the former Union scout and medic yet, and Jack preferred to keep it that way. Sarah Miller moved between tables with practiced efficiency, balancing a tray of whiskey glasses. At 28, she carried herself with the hard-earned confidence of a woman who'd learned to navigate dangerous waters. Her simple blue dress was modest compared to the other saloon girls, her movements businesslike rather than seductive. Around her neck hung a small silver locket. "Your whiskey, Mr. Blackwood," she said, setting down a glass before the mine owner. Blackwood barely acknowledged her, his attention fixed on the young woman at the piano. Emma Hayes, barely 18, with dark curls framing delicate features and skin a shade darker than most in the saloon would accept, played a melancholy tune. Her fingers moved with natural talent across the worn keys, her eyes downcast. "That girl," Blackwood said finally, his cultured voice carrying authority. "I want her." Something cold settled in Sarah's expression. "She's just a girl, sir." "Everything has a price, Miss Miller." Blackwood's gloved hand wrapped around her wrist, tight enough to bruise. "Tell Mercer I want to discuss business. Tonight." Jack watched the exchange with narrowed eyes, recognizing the predatory look on Blackwood's face. He'd seen it before, in the moments before the captain had ordered women and children lined up against a barn wall. Later that night, after settling his business and preparing to ride back to his ranch, Jack spotted movement behind the saloon. Sarah Miller was helping the piano player onto a horse, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Right east, she whispered urgently. Follow the creek. I'll be right behind you. Jack should have ridden away. This wasn't his fight, but something made him linger in the shadows, watching as Sarah slipped back into the saloon through a rear entrance. 10 minutes later, she emerged again, moving with purpose toward the stables. Jack followed silently, years of scouting making his footsteps ghost quiet. He watched her enter the small office connected to the saloon, use a key to open a wall safe, and remove papers and something small that glinted in the moonlight. When she turned to leave, Jack stood blocking the doorway, his hand resting casually near his Colt. Stealing from Blackwood? Dangerous game, Miss Miller. Sarah's hand moved toward her pocket, toward a Derringer, he guessed. Her green eyes narrowed, calculating her odds. This isn't theft, it's justice, she said, voice steady despite her obvious fear. A commotion erupted from the main saloon, shouting, breaking glass. Where is she? Blackwood's voice thundered. Find them both. Jack made his decision in an instant. Go. East Trail. I'll buy you time. He stepped aside and Sarah hesitated only a moment before running toward the stables. Jack moved in the opposite direction, emerging onto the main street just as Jenkins, Blackwood's head of security, burst from the saloon's front doors. Jenkins stood 6'3" with a prize fighter's build and a face that had seen too many battles. A long scar ran across his right cheek, matching the one on his boss's neck. His eyes held the hollow look of a man who'd sold his soul long ago. You! Jenkins pointed at Jack. Seen a woman run past. Red hair, blue dress. Jack shook his head, adjusting his gun belt casually. Been standing here smoking. Ain't seen nobody. The lie bought Sarah precious minutes. By the time Jenkins discovered the missing horses, she and the girl had a decent head start. But Jack knew it wouldn't be enough. Men like Blackwood didn't accept loss. Sure enough, as he mounted his own horse to return to his ranch, gunfire erupted at the edge of town. Without thinking, Jack spurred his horse toward the sound. He crested a ridge to see Sarah and Emma surrounded by 3 riders. The piano player was already bleeding from her shoulder, barely staying upright in her saddle. Sarah had drawn a small revolver but was outgunned. Jack's Winchester spoke 3 times in rapid succession. 2 riders fell immediately. The third, Jenkins, took a bullet in the arm but managed to stay mounted and retreat. Ride with me, Jack ordered, approaching the women. They'll be back with more men. Why are you helping us? Sarah demanded, still pointing her revolver at him. Because that man, Jack nodded in the direction Jenkins had fled, works for Victor Blackwood, and I've waited 5 years to put a bullet in Victor Blackwood's head. The girl's wound was bad. By the time they reached Jack's isolated cabin in the foothills, Emma was pale from blood loss, barely conscious. Jack carried her inside and laid her on his kitchen table. Light the lamps, he ordered Sarah, and find my medical kit under the bed. Sarah obeyed, watching with surprise as Jack efficiently cut away Emma's blood-soaked dress to expose the wound. His hands moved with practiced precision, cleaning the entry wound. The bullet's still in there, he muttered, examining the girl's shoulder. Need to get it out before infection sets in. You're a doctor? Army medic, 51st Pennsylvania. Saw enough bullets to last several lifetimes. Jack poured whiskey over a set of instruments that Sarah recognized as surgical tools. Hold her down. This'll hurt, even unconscious. For 20 tense minutes, Jack worked methodically, extracting the .44 caliber bullet with long-nosed pliers, cleaning the wound with carbolic acid, and finally bandaging Emma's shoulder. His movements were those of a man who'd performed such procedures under far worse conditions, with cannon fire overhead and dying men screaming all around. She'll live, he said finally, washing blood from his hands. If infection doesn't set in. Sarah collapsed into a chair, exhaustion evident in the slump of her shoulders. Thank you, she whispered. Jack didn't acknowledge her gratitude. Instead, he fixed her with a hard stare. Now what the hell did you steal that's worth getting shot over? Sarah's hand moved to the silver locket at her throat. After a moment of internal debate, she opened it, revealing not a portrait, but a small key. This opens Blackwood's second safe, the one with evidence of murders, land theft, and corruption that would see him hang. Jack's expression remained impassive. And the girl? Emma plays piano at the saloon. Blackwood wanted her, like he's wanted other girls before. Girls who disappear. Sarah's voice hardened. I couldn't let that happen. Jack studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. He moved to the window, scanning the darkness. They'll be coming. Blackwood doesn't strike me as a man who forgives being robbed. You know him. It wasn't a question, but Jack answered anyway. Captain Victor, the Vulture Blackwood, Confederate Army, a butcher who used the war to indulge his taste for cruelty. His voice turned bitter. I was a scout with a Union regiment. We captured him near Antietam, treated his wounds. That scar on his neck is my handiwork. Should have let him bleed out. He turned back to Sarah. Instead, he escaped. 2 days later, he found our position, surrounded us with twice our numbers, and ordered everyone executed. 42 soldiers, 12 civilians from a nearby farm, men, women, children. How did you survive? I was scouting. Came back to find them all dead. Jack's eyes had the 1,000-yard stare of a man revisiting hell. Spent 5 years tracking him west, gathering evidence, waiting. For what? The right moment, a chance to bring him to justice, or put him in the ground. Jack checked his rifle methodically. Looks like that moment's arrived sooner than expected. Jack moved to a corner of the cabin, pulled back a bearskin rug to reveal a trap door. There's something you should see. Sarah followed him down narrow wooden steps into a small cellar illuminated by a single lantern. What she saw took her breath away. The walls were covered with maps, newspaper clippings, wanted posters, and land deeds, all connected with red string. A detailed map of Blackwood's properties dominated one wall, with dates and names carefully noted. Photographs of men, some alive, some clearly dead, were pinned alongside official documents. 5 years of tracking, Jack explained, gesturing to the evidence. Every property he's stolen, every man he's killed, every official he's bribed. Sarah stared at the meticulous documentation. You were building a case. Was, Jack emphasized, until I realized the law out here belongs to men like Blackwood. Money talks louder than justice. A weak voice interrupted them from above. Sarah? Emma had regained consciousness, her eyes fever-bright in her pale face. As they hurried back upstairs, Jack gave Sarah a meaningful look. Not a word about this room to the girl. Not yet. Sarah rushed to Emma's side, stroking damp curls from the girl's forehead. I'm here. You're safe. Jack watched their interaction with a puzzled expression. You risk your life for a girl you barely know? Some things are worth risking everything for, Sarah replied, not looking up. Like justice, truth. Something shifted in Jack's eyes. Recognition, perhaps, of a kindred spirit. Another soul carrying invisible scars, fighting ghosts with nothing but stubborn determination. Before dawn, riders approached the cabin. Jack spotted them from his lookout position on the ridge. 4 men moving cautiously through the scrub. Jenkins among them, his arm crudely bandaged. Get to the cellar, he instructed Sarah and Emma. There's a trap door under the rug. Stay quiet no matter what happens. Sarah helped Emma to the hidden space while Jack prepared to meet their pursuers. He positioned himself casually on the porch, rifle across his lap as if enjoying the sunrise. Morning, gentlemen, he called as the riders approached. What brings you to my property? Jenkins reined in his horse, hatred burning in his eyes. You shot me, Reeves. You were threatening 2 women. Seems like a reasonable response. Where are they? Jenkins demanded. Blackwood wants what they stole. Jack shrugged. Don't know what you're talking about. I live alone. One of the other riders dismounted, moving toward the cabin. Jack's rifle barrel shifted slightly, tracking him. I wouldn't. Private property means something out here. We have authorization from the territory marshal, Jenkins claimed. These women are wanted for theft and murder. Do you now? Jack's tone remained conversational, but his eyes had turned cold. Interesting how fast Blackwood manufactured those charges. Something in his phrasing caught Jenkins' attention. You know Blackwood? We've met. Long ago. Jack stood slowly, rifle ready. Now, unless you've got a genuine warrant, I suggest you ride on. Jenkins studied Jack for a moment, then said quietly, Be careful whose side you choose, Reeves. Blackwood doesn't forgive, and he doesn't forget. There was something in his tone, a warning that seemed almost personal. Then he nodded to his men. Search the place. What followed was brief but violent. When the first man reached for the door, Jack fired, the bullet striking his leg. As he fell, Jack rolled off the porch, taking cover behind a water barrel. Gunfire erupted from both sides. Jack fired with deadly precision, years of combat experience evident in every shot. Within minutes, 2 of Jenkins' men lay dead, another wounded. Jenkins himself retreated, firing wildly as he rode away. This isn't over, Reeves, he shouted. Blackwood will burn this place to the ground. Wouldn't be the first time, Jack muttered, checking a graze wound on his arm. Sarah emerged from the cellar, revolver in hand. Her face paled at the sight of the bodies. You killed them. They would have killed us, Jack replied simply. And this is just the beginning. Jenkins will be back with more men. He began reloading his rifle. We need to move. I know a place in the mountains. Defensible. I know somewhere better, a new voice announced. Jack whirled, rifle raised, to find a tall black man standing at the edge of the clearing. Marcus Freeman wore buckskins and carried a Henry repeater with casual familiarity. His dark face broke into a grim smile at Jack's surprise. Been a while, Lieutenant. Jack lowered his weapon, something like relief crossing his features. Freeman, still moving like a ghost, I see. Old habits. Marcus approached, surveying the scene with a soldier's assessment. Heard gunfire. Figured you'd found trouble again. More like it found me. Jack nodded towards Sarah and Emma, who had joined them. This is Sarah Miller and Emma Hayes. Ladies, meet Marcus Freeman, best scout the Union Army ever had, and the only other survivor of our regiment. Marcus tipped his hat to the women. Ma'am, miss. His eyes lingered on Emma's bandaged shoulder. Appears I'm late to the fight. There'll be more fighting soon enough, Jack assured him. Blackwood's men. Marcus's expression darkened. The Vulture? Here? Owns half the territory now. Calls himself a respectable businessman. Marcus spat. Nothing respectable about that devil. He turned to Sarah. What's your connection to Blackwood? Sarah explained about the key, the safe, and her parents' murder in St. Louis. When she finished, Marcus nodded thoughtfully. I rode to Santa Fe yesterday, spoke with Marshal Davis about land fraud cases. His expression turned grim. Found him this morning with a bullet in his back. Robbery gone wrong, they're saying. The implications hung heavy in the air. Blackwood's reach extended beyond the territory, into the very institutions meant to provide justice. I know a place, Marcus continued. Old Apache hideout in the mountains. Good sight lines, natural spring, only one approach. He looked at Jack. Defensible. How long to get there? Half day's ride, if the girl can travel. All eyes turned to Emma, who straightened despite her obvious pain. I can ride. As they prepared to depart, Jack took one last look at the hidden room beneath his cabin. 5 years of work, evidence that might never see the light of day. With a resigned nod, he gathered the most crucial documents and maps, rolled them carefully, and added them to his saddlebags. The Apache hideout was everything Marcus had promised. A hidden box canyon with towering walls, accessible only through a narrow entrance that could be defended by a single rifleman. A small spring provided fresh water, and natural caves offered shelter. While Marcus rode for Santa Fe to investigate the marshal's death further, Jack established defensive positions, showing Sarah and Emma how to use the canyon's natural features to their advantage. "See this ridge?" Jack pointed to a rocky outcrop. "Gives you a clear shot at anyone coming through that entrance. Stay low, use cover, and remember, aim for center mass. More likely to hit something vital." Emma surprised him by field stripping and reassembling his spare revolver with practiced ease. At his raised eyebrow, she explained, "The bartender at Silver Creek taught me. Said a girl in my position needed to know how to protect herself." Jack nodded approvingly. "Smart man." Emma's condition improved slowly, her strength returning with each passing day. On the third night, as they sat around a small fire, she finally asked the question that had been in her eyes since their escape. Why does a saloon girl risk everything for a piano player? Sarah's gaze remained fixed on the flames. "Because I know what it's like to be powerless, to have everything taken from you." She told them about her father, a lawyer in St. Louis who discovered Blackwood's land fraud scheme, how their house had burned with her parents inside, a tragic accident, according to officials who'd later accepted Blackwood's bribes. "I was 17, alone, with nothing but a key my father had given me, in the name of the man responsible." Her fingers traced the outline of the locket. "I spent 7 years working my way closer to Blackwood. Saloons, mining offices, anywhere I could gather information. 7 years planning revenge," Jack observed. "Makes my 5 seem impatient." A ghost of a smile touched Sarah's lips. "Not revenge, justice." Emma reached for Sarah's hand, then slowly rolled up her sleeve to reveal a small brand, Blackwood's cattle mark, burned into her forearm. "There's something I haven't told you about Blackwood." She took a deep breath. "He's my father." The revelation landed like a physical blow. Sarah stared at her in shock while Jack straightened, suddenly alert. "My mother was Mexican," Emma continued. "Maria Hayes. She worked in his house in Santa Fe. When she got pregnant, he moved her to a small ranch away from town." Her voice remained steady despite the pain in her eyes. "After she died of fever when I was 12, he sold me to pay gambling debts. Never acknowledged me as his daughter, too ashamed of having a half-Mexican child." The silence that followed was broken only by the crackling fire. Finally, Jack spoke. "That changes things. Makes you a witness, not just a runaway." "Makes me bait," Emma corrected, surprising them with her pragmatism. "He came to the saloon regularly, never showed any sign of recognizing me. But if he knew I was alive, knew what I could testify to, he'd want you silenced," Sarah finished. Jack studied the young woman with new respect. "You suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" Emma nodded. "I'm tired of running, of being afraid. Let's use me to draw him out." "Absolutely not," Sarah protested. But Jack was already considering the tactical possibilities. "It could work, with the right preparation, the right location." "We'd need leverage," Sarah argued. "Insurance that reaches the right people, even if we don't survive." "Marcus is investigating Davis's death," Jack reminded her. "If he can find an honest lawman, we'll have our insurance." They spent the night developing their plan. Emma would be visible, the bait. Sarah would secure the evidence. Jack and Marcus would handle Blackwood and his men. Simple, direct, with contingencies for when, not if, things went wrong. Dawn was breaking when Marcus returned, not with a new marshal, but with grave news. Every official I approached suddenly became unavailable. Blackwood's reach is longer than we thought. His expression darkened. And he's hired the Apache Raiders, Wilson, Delaney, and Carson, professional gunmen. Jack absorbed this setback with grim resignation. Then we do this ourselves. Marcus nodded toward Emma. Told her the truth, did she? Jack's eyebrows rose in surprise. You knew? Saw her mother once, years ago. Girl has her eyes. Marcus shrugged. Figured it wasn't my story to tell. Their plan adapted. They prepared for the confrontation. Jack insisted on returning to his cabin, the ground he knew best, the place Blackwood would expect to find them. They spent a day reinforcing positions, setting traps, preparing for siege. That evening, Jenkins appeared alone at the edge of the clearing, hands raised in the universal sign of parley. Jack approached cautiously, rifle ready. I come to talk, Jenkins called. Just talk. Talk fast, Jack replied, keeping him in his sights. Jenkins dismounted slowly. Blackwood's coming tomorrow, dawn, bringing 15 men, including the raiders. He looked around nervously. He plans to burn everything, kill everyone. Why tell me this? A bitter smile twisted Jenkins's scarred face. Because he ordered me to kill my own brother last month. Suspicion of stealing wasn't even true. His eyes hardened. Man like that doesn't deserve loyalty. Jack studied him, weighing the man's words against the possibility of a trap. What do you want? When it happens tomorrow, I don't shoot at you. You don't shoot at me. Jenkins remounted his horse. That's all. As he rode away, Jack called after him. Why'd you stay with him all these years? Jenkins paused. Same reason you're hunting him. He's got something on me I can't walk away from. Without further explanation, he disappeared into the gathering darkness. The night before Blackwood's expected arrival, Sarah found Jack cleaning his rifle on the porch. The moon cast his weathered face in silver light, emphasizing the lines carved by years of carrying vengeance like a physical weight. If we survive this, she said quietly, what then? Jack continued his methodical maintenance. Haven't thought that far ahead. Been living for one thing so long, I'm not sure what comes after. Maybe that's what Blackwood took from all of us. Not just people we loved, but futures we might have had. Jack looked up, truly seeing her perhaps for the first time. Not as a means to Blackwood, not as a saloon girl, but as a woman carrying the same burden he'd shouldered for years. Then we take that back too, he said simply. Dawn broke clear and cold over Jack's cabin. From his position on the ridge, Winchester ready, Jack watched the approach with the calm focus of a man who had faced death many times. 6 riders approached slowly, Blackwood in the center on a magnificent black stallion. Jenkins rode at his right, arms still bandaged. The other 4 were clearly hired guns, the Apache Raiders, infamous for their brutality. Inside the cabin, Emma sat alone in a shaft of sunlight, her dark curls catching the light. Sarah remained hidden behind stacked hay bales, revolver ready. Marcus had positioned himself in the barn loft, rifle trained on the approaching riders. Jack allowed them to reach the yard before standing, making his presence known. That's far enough, Blackwood. The riders halted. Blackwood shaded his eyes, studying the man on the ridge. Do I know you? Antietam, 1862. Jack's voice carried in the morning stillness. Lieutenant Jack Reeves, 51st Pennsylvania. You executed my men after we treated your wounds. Recognition dawned in Blackwood's eyes, followed by something like amusement. The scout. I wondered if any survived. He straightened in his saddle. Ancient history, Lieutenant. I'm a businessman now. Same business, different uniform. Jack's rifle remained trained on Blackwood's chest. Murder, theft, corruption. Blackwood sighed theatrically. I've come for what's mine. The key, the documents, and the girl. Return them, and perhaps we can discuss compensation. Or perhaps we discuss your crimes, the families you've destroyed, the land you've stolen. Jack nodded toward the cabin. Why don't you come inside? Alone. Let's talk. Blackwood hesitated, suspicious of the invitation. Jenkins leaned closer, whispering something in his ear. After a moment, Blackwood dismounted. The rest of you, stay alert, he ordered his men. Anything happens, burn this place to the ground. Jack descended the ridge, keeping his rifle ready but not aimed directly at Blackwood. They approached the cabin together, two adversaries measuring each other with every step. Inside, Emma remained seated, hands folded in her lap. She raised her eyes as Blackwood entered, meeting his gaze without flinching. The piano player, he observed. What made you worth all this trouble, I wonder? Perhaps you should ask my mother, Emma replied steadily. Maria Hayes. For the first time, Blackwood's composure cracked. He stared at the young woman, taking in features he'd overlooked before. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her jaw. Impossible, he whispered. Maria's child died. Is that what you told yourself? Emma stood slowly, pulling up her sleeve to reveal the brand. Or what you hoped after you sold your own daughter to pay gambling debts. Blackwood's shock quickly transformed to rage. His hand moved to his coat, drawing a derringer. If you are Maria's daughter, then you're the last loose end from that unfortunate chapter. He aimed at Emma, but Jack moved faster, placing himself between them as Blackwood fired. The impact drove Jack backward. Pain erupted in his chest, hot and immediate. Outside, gunfire erupted as Marcus opened fire from the barn. Through dimming vision, Jack saw Sarah emerge from hiding, firing her revolver. Her bullet caught Blackwood in the shoulder, spinning him around. The door burst open. Jenkins stepped in, took in the scene, and made a decision that surprised them all. His gun swung toward Blackwood. For my brother, he said simply, and fired. Blackwood collapsed, a look of utter disbelief on his aristocratic features as life drained from him. Jenkins turned to Sarah. The others are retreating. Raiders don't fight when their employer's dead. Sarah rushed to Jack's side, pressing against his wound. Stay with me, she urged. We're not finished yet. Jack fought to remain conscious, focusing on her face. The documents, he managed to whisper, in my saddlebag. Get them to Santa Fe. We will, Sarah assured him, tears streaming down her face. But you'll deliver them yourself. You're going to live, Jack Reeves. As darkness claimed him, Jack found himself thinking not of vengeance finally achieved, but of her words the night before. About futures stolen and reclaimed. For the first time in 5 years, he allowed himself to wonder about tomorrow. 3 months passed before Jack could sit on his porch without pain. The bullet had missed his heart by less than an inch, collapsing his lung but sparing his life. Sarah had refused to leave his side during his recovery, changing bandages, reading to him during fevered nights, slowly rebuilding what Blackwood had tried to destroy. The cabin had been repaired, bullet holes patched, bloodstains scrubbed from floorboards. New curtains hung in windows once covered for concealment. Signs of life returning where there had been only survival. Marcus rode up as the sun began its descent, bringing news from Santa Fe. With Blackwood dead and his documents in the hands of federal authorities, his corrupt network had unraveled quickly. Officials had been arrested, stolen land returned to rightful owners, justice slowly taking root in soil long poisoned. Jenkins had turned state's evidence, trading his testimony for leniency. His detailed account of Blackwood's operations had proven invaluable to prosecutors. Emma had used her inheritance, the ultimate irony of being Blackwood's only legal heir, to establish a school for miners and railroad workers' children. She taught piano there 3 days a week, her quiet strength earning respect from the community that had once viewed her with suspicion. As evening approached, Sarah joined Jack on the porch. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains golden purple. Marshall Wilson offered me a position, Jack said finally. Special deputy for land claim disputes. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Thinking of accepting? Maybe. Jack reached into his pocket, withdrawing an old ranger badge from the war. Been carrying this a long time. Reminder of oaths I took once. To uphold justice. Jack nodded. Vengeance kept me alive when nothing else would. But it's a poor companion for the long haul. He studied the badge in his palm. Maybe it's time to stand for something, not just against. Sarah's hand found his, their fingers interlacing naturally after months of cautious proximity. Perhaps justice finally comes to the West, she said softly, and perhaps people like us can find peace. Jack smiled, a rare sight that transformed his weathered face, or at least a new beginning. In the distance, a coyote called, its lonely voice echoing across the valley. But on the porch of a once empty cabin, two souls who had carried solitude like armor found themselves planning for a tomorrow neither had dared imagine, and for the first time in years it felt like enough.